Hello everyone, and welcome to NS2U University. My name is Saz. Now some of you may know me, and some of you may not. For those of you that don't, I'm a caster for the NS2 competitive scene, and I will be your professor for the foreseeable future. In this first class, I will give you guys, specifically newer players and those who are wholly unfamiliar with the mechanics of Build 250 and beyond, tips and advice to strengthen your fundamentals of the game as Marines, covering, to the best of my abilities, the basic Marine movement and weapon playstyles. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a caster for NS2. I'm nowhere near ESL Division 1 skill, nor do I claim to be, but I am a self-professed competitive scene junkie for whatever game I happen to be playing. And I don't think it would be immodest of me to say that I have a decent understanding of NS2, and I would like to share that understanding with all of you. So this is how I'm structuring the course. This video will equip you with the tools that you need to improve your Marine play. I will be posting separate videos linked in the description with in-depth analysis and commentary showing you the practical applications of the lessons you've learned in this course. I will add supplemental videos as often as I can so that I can provide you guys with a vast library of knowledge from which to learn, so be sure to keep checking back. Just a little heads up before we begin. First, NS2 is always subject to change, and as such, anything in this video can be invalidated by any given patch. If this is the case, I will do my best to keep it updated with annotations so I don't spread misinformation. However, this video deals predominantly with the fundamental gameplay aspects of NS2, not balance aspects like weapon or lifeform damage, so I'm confident in saying that this video should apply for the very long-term future of the game. Second, NS2 is called an FPS-RTS hybrid. With this video, I will be covering the FPS aspect of the Marine side as a kind of pilot to test the waters and see how the demand is for this kind of series. Perhaps later, depending on how this video is received, I will make a similar one for Aliens. But in any case, without further ado, let us begin with our first lesson, Marines 101. I will be covering everything from basic concepts to intermediate and maybe even advanced gameplay, depending on what you consider to be complicated. We'll start with movement and awareness. These are the two most fundamental aspects of the game. Now, unlike movement, awareness isn't necessarily affected by the Build 250 changes, but I'm assuming that most of the viewers of this video are new not only to NS2, but the kind of game it is, which requires a much more hyper-aware style of playing, which might not be too familiar or comfortable for those who are new. I'll expand on this when we get to it. Two quick tips about movement before we begin. Dropping your pistol will make you run and sprint noticeably faster, thus allowing you to reach your destination that much quicker. Dropping your rifle will make you run even faster, but obviously that would be relatively counterproductive, so most people who take this approach will elect to drop their pistol instead. You don't normally see this beyond the first few minutes of the game, because getting to places quickly for Marines is crucial in the early minutes. There are obvious drawbacks though, as you just saw in this clip where I was taken down by a skulk that I likely could have killed if I hadn't dropped my pistol to get the locker room that quickly. It's up to you to decide whether you want to take this approach. You can also use ramps and staircases to your advantage. Jumping down the incline can give you a very momentary boost of speed, propelling you towards a battle or even away from a chasing skulk. A major component of NS2 movement is positioning. Always, always, always check your corners. Don't be scared to crouch to get the jump on an unsuspecting skulk. When you're solo, take wide approaches to corners, hugging the parallel wall. If you're right next to the corner, experienced skulks will anticipate your movement by using sound and preemptively pounce upon you. If you take a wider turn and the skulk attempts this, he will have to cover much more ground, which will give you the crucial seconds you need to track and kill it. When you are in a group with one or more people, cover becomes vital to your efficiency. You never want to be right next to someone in most situations. If you're running through an assumed safe corridor, then by all means, but as a general rule of thumb, you want to have a pretty sizable distance between yourself and your teammates. This enables you all to more effectively cover each other if there's an ambush. In this clip you're watching, I've deliberately put myself in as bad a spot as possible by staying as close as I can to my teammate. Watch what happens when we're ambushed. By the time I die, he has time only to react. If I had been farther behind, he would have at least had distance between himself and the skulk, increasing his chance of survival. And then I apologize because I felt bad. Now in this clip, you'll see me play how I normally do, taking the more ranged cover approach. Keep in mind that your responsibilities go beyond just covering the point man. You have to be aware of your surroundings. Check your map and behind you periodically to snuff out any ambushes. Using an effective cover system like this puts the skulks in a more difficult situation because they are forced to make a decision. Should they focus each marine down one at a time, or split up and attack separate targets? If they decide to focus down your teammate, sure they might kill him, but more often than not, by the time they get to you, their HP will be significantly lower, allowing you and any other teammate to clean them up with relative ease. If you do this well enough, the only way for aliens to counter it, as you're about to see, is to send a substantial number of lifeforms after you. And even then, we probably could have won this engagement if I had finished reloading my rifle instead of quick switching. Cover is also key for building structures. In early game RT cap situations, you always have to be on the lookout for ambushing skulks. You want to cover your teammate as he builds the extractor, constantly spamming A and D to strafe in order to make it more difficult for peeking skulks to parasite you. This also helps for phase gates, but power building PGs obviously makes them build quicker, and when you're in a pinch or overextended into enemy territory, time is crucial. But always remain aware of the entrances and various avenues of approach for aliens. Notice in the gameplay you're seeing how often I'm looking at my map, which might seem counterintuitive, but don't worry, I'll address this technique and how to properly utilize it later. Alternatively, you can implement cover offensively as well. While your teammate is attacking an alien structure, do the same thing. Watch the entrances and make it difficult for enemy lifeforms to engage. Notice in this clip that even though I'm covering, I'm being useful in other ways by checking the map and relaying information to my team that they might not be aware of. IP in base, IP in base. Now, for solo combat, or if you're the point man in a group, you won't always have the luxury of range in a fight. This is where knowledge of the strengths and limitations of NS2U's movement becomes extremely important. Now, with build 250, Sulek and Unknown Worlds have gone for a throwback approach, implementing quasi-bunny hopping back into the game for aliens. I'm reluctant to call it actual bunny hopping for technical reasons, but I won't get into that. All you need to know is that it's a system of movement made famous in Quake, Half-Life, Counter-Strike, etc. that greatly increased the player's speed. It was a big part of alien movement in NS1, but was entirely removed in vanilla NS2, i.e. pre-build 250. I'll explore this more when we jump to alien coverage, but what you need to know for now is that Skulk Speed has a very high potential post-build 250 in the hands of a really skilled player. These players can maintain high speeds in combat, but you'll most likely not face them in public servers. The ones that you do encounter will more often than not be players who can gain really high speeds for travel, but lose nearly all of that momentum in combat. Take advantage of this. Let's take a look at marine movement, shall we? For this demonstration, I have the debug speed command up as well as a virtual keyboard to help you guys see the exact keystrokes of this technique. Notice first that forward and lateral movement have a speed of 4.91. Backwards movement, however, maxes out at 1.97, significantly slower. So how are you supposed to create distance efficiently? Well, there are certain keystroke sequences that you can use to do just that. The key here is to turn 90 degrees to either side, whichever is more comfortable for you, strafe to get that 4.91 speed, jump, and turn 90 degrees back to the front. This completely forgoes the backward snail movement in favor of a more robust, distance-creating dodge movement. You may have noticed me utilizing this technique quite a bit in the clips you've been watching. Now, let's see this implemented in some actual combat situations. In this clip, my goal is to save the extractor and ventilation, but as I turn the corner towards maintenance access, I find myself caught severely out of position against an oncoming skulk. Look how much time I buy myself to finish reloading by using this type of movement. This next clip is a testament to how absolutely horrific my rifle tracking can be at times. But by the same token, it shows how difficult this back-strafe jumping technique can make it for aliens to engage you efficiently. If I had one or two more teammates on the way from our spawn in sub-access, I would have kept the Fade and Skulk busy long enough for them to arrive and hopefully finish off the aliens. Here, you'll see 3 Skulks coordinate a very sloppy ambush on me. Again, this is not the greatest display of shooting on my part, but what I'm trying to show you with these clips is that you don't have to be the best shot in the world to win engagements. My back-strafe jumping gave the commander the opportunity to med spam me, allowing me to win the engagement and our team to hold locker rooms at a crucial point in the early mid-game. This works extremely well with the shotgun too. Notice, however, I'm retreating in a more sweeping motion rather than straight back. I do this because it allows me to stay relatively closer to the skulks, yet still hard to chase, thus maximizing my damage potential with a shotgun spread, something unnecessary when you're using the rifle. And yes, the Gorge dies. This final clip will show how this jumping technique can save your life when literally everything goes wrong. I'm attempting to kill the skulks biting on the power, but I get there too late. Disoriented and caught in the dark, notice how my teammate is simply walking backwards instead of back-strafe jumping. Not only is he a vulnerable target for the skulks, but he makes it difficult for me to dodge since he is blocking my route of escape. I'm able to survive, however, thanks to my muscle memory and a timely mine assist. Practice this technique and it can work wonders for your marine play. Often, the early game can come down to a 1v1 battle for, more or less, an entire side of the map, and being able to win that fight will give your team a huge advantage. Now, let's move on to awareness. This really doesn't have anything to do with Build 250, but more so, like I said in the introduction, with the style of gameplay that NS2 dictates. You want to be checking your map at all times. Make sure you bind it to a key that you're comfortable pressing and holding at any time. Personally, mine is a tab key. Getting into this habit will help you to cut off retreating aliens, and this is extremely important in the mid-game when the Fade ball pops. When a Fade is running away from an engagement after taking damage, all it takes is a well-placed shotgun blast to spell disaster for Mr. Fade.
Armory down in these.
Fade down.
There you go, you got him.
Remember when I said it might be counterintuitive to check your map while covering a teammate or building structures? Well, here's a tip. When you're looking at your map, any skulks who enter your field of vision will be spotted. Even if your eyes physically miss it, it will be revealed on your map. In this way, it's not a bad idea to scan big rooms while holding your map key. You'll be able to see skulks hiding in corners or areas that you might not notice with your naked eye. You should also get into a very good habit of checking your map whenever your commander scans the room you're in. Even if there's a big fight going on, find a second or two to look at your map just to get your bearings and the enemy distribution within the room. This is extremely helpful when you're phasing into a room with a crazy battle or getting beaconed to a tech point where you'll have to situate yourself very quickly. Remember, unless you're actually in the middle of shooting, always be checking your map. Whether you're building a structure, running to another location, or waiting to respawn, it doesn't matter. Hit that map key. Call out enemy ambushes and locations for teammates who might have missed them. And don't be afraid to communicate. Let your teammate know you're covering him. Call out enemy positions. Clue your commander into the situation on the ground. He may have the bird's eye view, but he's missing that crucial ground perspective. Communication and awareness are key to victory in NS2. Lurks in flight. Now, before we get into the different weapon breakdowns, let's take a look at a clip that combines positioning, awareness, and communication. This will also be a good opportunity for you to preview the kind of analytical approach I'll be taking in the supplemental videos that I mentioned in the introduction, as I will be modeling them after this. Let's watch it through in real time first, then we'll go back and analyze it together. But pay attention and see if you can break down the situation at full speed before we slow it down.
System waypointing, I'll try and chase him out. And you can...
Yeah, don't lose sight of everyone.
Fade's coming, Roland.
Almost got him. Good, good, good.
Were you able to follow along? Now, cutting off the fade may have seemed like a no-brainer, but let's take a closer look and see everything that went into my decision process. First, let me give you a quick rundown of the situation. We're setting up a phase gate in Y Junction so that we can pressure the alien hive and cargo. Including me, there are 2 Marines, an Exo, and a Mac. Even though I'm helping to build the gate, look what I'm doing. This is the awareness lesson coming into play. I'm checking my map to look for enemy movements, specifically this fade in subsector. As soon as I see him exiting towards system waypointing, I'm immediately locking into the route of escape he's taking. If he goes towards nanogrid to heal, fine, no skin off my back. But if he beelines towards Y Junction, I need to react quickly if I'm going to successfully ambush him. Now let's run the clip a little bit and find out where this fade is going. Ah, so he is coming to Y Junction. I know this because he's not cutting across the room, he's hugging this southern wall here. Now that I have this information, I have very little time to react, but my first step is to communicate. I let my teammate know the fade is coming, just in case I miss my shot. Hopefully he'll be prepared to bail me out. Fade's coming, Roland. Now, notice how I preemptively flew towards the fade. Why did I do this? Well, this is where understanding of positioning dictated my movement. Fades have an extremely high speed potential in the hands of a skilled player, which is true in this case as Villain plays for Damage Networks, a North American Division 1 team. If I sat back near the phase gate, there's a great chance that he would have seen me and had enough time to react, blinking to redirect his momentum through these doors and right past the Exo, who's simply too preoccupied defending against oncoming aliens, thus safely arriving in cargo to heal and continue terrorizing my team, which he had been doing the entire game. By moving forward, I effectively cut off this escape route. Sure, he can try to gun right past me, but now I have close enough distance to deal a high amount of damage, and if he wants to change direction, he has 2 options. 1, he could try passing me on my right side and go up towards nanogrid, but he would also have to deal with my teammate who is also wielding a shotgun. Not a likely choice. Or 2, he could do a complete 180 and spin around, which Fades can do on a dime with extreme ease, and go back to waypointing, up through to nanogrid and heal, which would have been the correct course of action to take. But by the time he realized I was there, even someone of Villain's skill level won't always be able to diagnose it quickly enough to escape. And I can guarantee you that while he was in system waypointing, coming towards Y Junction, he was doing the exact same thing that I was. He was checking his map, trying to assess his best escape route, but I had the advantage because he had just engaged my teammates in subsector, so I had map sight of him. There were no aliens in Y Junction that had me in line of sight, so there was absolutely no way he could have known he was about to be ambushed.
Almost got him. Good, good, good. Nice.
Now I've been freeze framing the clip to illustrate my thought process, but let's watch that brief moment in real time once more to see how quickly this entire mental analysis has to take place.
Yeah, don't lose sight of everyone.
Fade's coming, Roland. 13 frames. 13 frames between seeing the Fade exit sub, determining his route of escape, communicating to my teammate, and moving into my cutoff position. What took me a little more than 3 minutes to break down for you occurred in my head in under half a second. Your ability to see and identify something like this has to be insanely fast, and you'll get better with this over time, but the more you play, the more you'll understand the game, and the better you'll be able to identify a situation such as this.
Until we get
Please don't hurt me, villain. Now, let's get into weapon playstyles. Each marine weapon dictates a different style of play, and it's of extremely high import that you realize the nuances of each one in order to fit properly into your role and help bring your team to victory. Let's start with the rifle. For all the little bells and whistles available in the NS2, the heart of natural selection has and always will be the rifle versus the skulk. There's a big difference between rifle and shotgun use, and this will become clear later. For the rifle, however, you'll be using tracking to aim and gun down skulks. This is easily defined as following or attempting to follow skulks with your crosshair. Now, tracking in a shooter with predictable movements like Counter-Strike, Battlefield, or God help us, Call of Duty, is a lot different from a game like NS2 that has high-speed lifeforms like skulks, fades, and lurks. In this way, it's no mistake that NS2 is called a twitch shooter. Rifle tracking has been a source of incredible consternation for new players, and even more experienced ones. It's just not that easy for some people to track enemies that move so erratically, not to mention the unorthodox sizes and shapes of some of the lifeforms. Most advice pertaining to this usually involves people saying, "lol, L2P," or "practice, practice, practice." I've personally had my own troubles with this if it wasn't already clear enough in earlier footage, but I've discovered and implemented a little trick that isn't without historical precedence. Check this out. In World War II, American anti-air batteries had difficulty tracking Japanese Zeros at night. They just couldn't hit the damn things. Wanting to remedy this, the military sponsored a study in the mechanics of human vision, the human eye, and how it functions in low-light environments. What they found was interesting. I won't get into the anatomy and physiology of it. If you'd like, you can look up how rod and cone cells in the eye function with light and color, but the study concluded that, in low light, the peripheral vision becomes clearer than what the eye is actually focusing on. In essence, they told their gunners to look either in front of or behind the Japanese Zeros, and instantly the kill count skyrocketed. Now, I don't always remember to do this myself, but when I do, I have noticed much improved tracking, and I'm suggesting this in the hopes that it might have some benefit for you as well. Try focusing not on the skulk itself, but behind or ahead of it. I usually look behind it, and see how well you can track it. Personally, I'm really interested in the efficacy of this approach, so do let me know if it has any effect on your tracking. Let's move on to the shotgun. The shotgun is an invaluable tool in the Marines' arsenal. Incredible cone DPS, and arguably one of the best crowd control weapons because, unlike the Flamethrower, which actually has been insanely buffed in 250, the shotgun's burst damage forces higher lifeforms to retreat, if not outright killing them, and, unlike the grenade launcher, it does not sacrifice close quarters defense at the expense of high damage. Now, I refer to the rifle as implementing tracking to aim. The shotgun is different. The best shotgun users normally utilize twitch aim or reflex shots. Whatever you want to call it, it involves great hand-eye coordination and fast mouse movement, snapping the crosshair to your intended target. Some players, including myself, tend to deliberately aim away from the alien lifeform and snap back to it. It's a habit I've grown accustomed to after being a really heavy AWPer for my CS 1.6 teams. Also, and this next piece of advice applies to the rifle as well, do not shoot just because you can shoot. Make your bullets count. Well, you might ask, how do I do this? Windows of opportunity. Wait for the alien to make a movement during which it has significantly less control over itself. In other words, wait for skulks to be in mid-jump. While they're hanging in the air, snap to them and blast them. Now, this takes a lot of practice if you're not used to it, but like most things in shooters, it's a function of muscle memory and reaction time, both of which can be trained and sharpened, and it also depends a little bit on what sensitivity you play with for Marines. For fades, wait for that little window between blinks or shadow step cooldowns where they're vulnerable to be hit. Predict the gliding trajectory of a sporing lurk, although really good lurks are extremely difficult to hit regardless because of their erratic movement patterns.
Above you.
All of these things are aspects of the NS2 movement system that you should familiarize yourself with and take advantage of in order to maximize your utility as a Marine.
Feel free to love each other at any time.
Let's take a look at two different clips that illustrate the kind of twitchy reflex aim that's conducive to shotgun use. In this first clip, I'm phasing back to base to defend against a 3-skulk rush. Notice how I'm aiming off of the skulks, then snapping back. Aiming off, snapping back.
Main.
Aiming off, snapping back. And aiming off, and snapping back. The best way I can explain this is that I'm not using my crosshair to aim. I'm using my eyes. Locked on the skulk, I just bring the crosshair to where my eyes are looking and fire away. This second clip is a great example of how muscle memory can save your life. For Division 1 players, this is pretty run-of-the-mill stuff, but for me, 9 times out of 10 I'm dead after both of these engagements. The first skulk completely jumps me. As soon as I'm bitten, I'm already saying to myself, alright, you're screwed. But out of habit, I use some strafe jumping to create distance, spin around, and identify one of those windows of opportunity. As if this wasn't enough, I hear another skulk in the vent. I get a little flustered when I spin around because I'm not sure which direction the skulk will go after he exits, and I actually miss him coming out. But it's my muscle memory and reflex shooting that saves me when the skulk is in my face. Let's check it out once more in real time.
Reactor core again, guys.
Now let's talk about the Flamethrower. The Flamethrower has been in limbo for quite a while, but with 250 it's really starting to come into its own as a DPS machine. You can kill a skulk in seconds with a steady stream of fire and annihilate structures with the DPS plus the dot stacks. Also, it greatly diminishes the energy regeneration rate of all life forms on fire. So burn those gorges, burn those fades, and they'll be toast. Literally. Keep in mind, however, a flamethrower does not make you Johnny Rambo. Despite the damage it can do, you're still in a defensive support role. If you're with 1 or 2 teammates, stand a little behind them. When the aliens close in on them, just light them up. Alternatively, you can just constantly burn your teammates to preemptively protect them from aliens. You can also burn the walls and floor. It won't do a ton of damage, but any alien who runs over the flames will take damage over time. Each flamethrower clip has a ton of ammunition, so be very liberal with your usage. Also, don't forget, the flamethrower is a hard counter for lurk spores and umbra. If you see either of these gases being used, they should always be your priority. Hydras and clogs were also recently changed into flammable structures like cysts, and as a result, the flamethrower is now the most effective weapon against them, bar none. Offensively speaking, the key to the flamethrower is, obviously, to keep the maximum distance possible between yourself and the enemy, while still keeping them within flame range. Easier said than done, but try incorporating strafe jumping in a circle or from side to side. Now, don't confuse this with the back-strafe jumping that we covered earlier, as that would require you to look away. The flamethrower's damage comes from its impact damage working in conjunction with its dot stack, which requires impact damage, so consistency is key. Any time you're spending not burning down enemies is time you're spending not doing any damage. Moving on to the grenade launcher, the GL is a crazy crowd control siege weapon. Obviously, the drawback is the sacrifice you make in terms of personal defense. If you're caught by a skulk, you're normally dead meat unless you work some kind of pistol magic, or get lucky with a direct hit grenade, killing the skulk while damaging yourself in the process, which would leave you vulnerable to be cleaned up by any other life forms who happen to be wandering about, and they're always about. As such, if you buy a GL, you should never, never, never be alone. Remember Justin Bieber's movie Never Say Never? Well, you can say never in this case, because when you're a solo GL, it never turns out well for you. Ever. Always be with at least one other teammate, although multiple would be ideal. This helps tremendously in engagement since there's no friendly fire and you can just spam grenades at their feet when they get swarmed by aliens. This can also turn the tide of a battle when a really good fade turns into a really greedy fade, and sticks around too long trying to get that one last swipe in, a common pub symptom, especially for good fades or those who are more or less confident with their fade play. Before they know it, they've eaten 2 grenades and are a few bullets from death. The best way to use GLs is by using your map awareness. Find crammed corridors where aliens are engaging your teammates and just spam nades in there from a distance. Combine 1 or 2 GLs with a flamethrower and a shotgun or 2 and it will be very easy to decimate any alien crag base or hive location. Well, that's it for my Marine coverage. I hope this video helped give you new players some good pointers, a more solid understanding of the game, and a nice foundation to build upon. And even if you're not new, I hope that it was enlightening or entertaining in some way. If you guys like this, which I hope you do, it'll give me the incentive to really expand on NS2U, starting with an Aliens 101 video covering all the different life forms, especially movement, since that's the biggest learning curve for new players, and who knows, maybe even commanding somewhere down the line, so stay tuned. So with that, thanks for indulging me. Once again, this is Saz, and I will see you in game. Class dismissed.